instrument. And yeah, I think actually I was more inspired by the person rather than the instrument itself, because I liked who he was, the kind of person that he was. He was actually at the time a presenter on Classic FM, and like I think,
Yeah.
do you remember that time? I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he still does like a small program, but
yeah. That was still like after he just came back. So yeah, he was. I was more inspired by him, than by the instrument. And then the more time I spent with him, the more I began to love the cello. And basically, I think the importance of it all was to keep consistency, because at the time we had to share instruments, so you can only get the instrument on Saturday, which was actually a bit not really conducive to progress,
yeah.
And so my brother was like a big one. I was very lucky to have him. So he kind of taught me a lot of things on paper, actually. So he would sort of draw like lines, that are the strings, and he'd kind of teach you the system of tone, semitone, tone, semitone. So I could learn fingerings. I could learn like pieces just of the numbers and the strings, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
And that was cool. But then when I go on Saturday, then everything would sort of be put into practice. And like that was the process for a long time until we were able to get our own instrument. And then like I got lucky, and they saw a bit of potential. And then they said, if you want to get a better education as well, we could try and get you in some way. And I wasn't going to say no. So I got lucky, and I got sent to St. John's College, which was great. Cut a long story short, it was an amazing 5 years, because it's another world of opportunity. It's like, yeah, I mean, people had access to things I'd never had. I could record music, I could play competitions, and I didn't have to pay for a lot of that stuff, because at the time the family couldn't afford it. So it was that kind of opportunity that you guys, I would say, maybe you have now, or to be under an organization that can point you in the right direction, I guess. And then then straight after that, I ended up coming to the Royal Northern College of Music. But I think you'll have to ask me more specific questions.
Okay.
That's basically the story, really.
Yeah. I mean, what I was really wondering is like when you started improvising, because I remember when we played in the Miyagi Orchestra together, that we used to have like Quilla nights, and I'm pretty sure I remember you already improvising then.
Yeah. I mean,
you would just like play with anyone, like it was right. Like, how did you get started on that?
So improvisation began, I mean, I would say probably with the Quilla music stuff, and also like at home, people are always singing hymns, and it's always actually has a very improvisational element to it, So I feel like in all of you and all of us, this idea is always embedded, somehow that we are like, first and foremost, we are all singers. And I think that's like embedded in our culture and who we are and where we come from. So that was from the get-go, like the standard thing that was like in my bones. I was like, I know that I can sing. I know that I have the ability to interpret music through voice. And I think that's a gift that a lot of us have, coming from going to church and that kind of thing. So that was one, and it actually had always been there at the back of my head, but never really as an idea that could be a career, because I think classical music had put into my mind that I'd only play the cello and that's what I do. But actually I had to really explore a little bit more about what I really think is me, So when I came to the Royal Northern College of Music, it was like, everybody's good at the cello, especially in my class with this lady called Hannah Roberts. Everybody was incredible. And I was just wondering, who I was. So even before then, I was already curious, playing with different bass players and doing arrangements of quellas and of hymns. And then after that, I think it was just like start to make your own music rather than interpret other people's music. So that happened throughout high school, and always I think going to church and singing hymns was always like a part of it. It never went away. So I guess I could say I've been improvising since then, but I think the idea became more concrete when I came to the UK, actually asking the questions whether I can do this professionally. And I still feel like a beginner, I still feel like I'm starting again and again.
Yeah.
Because at the moment I'm interested in different types of string instruments from the African diaspora. So that's like one of my main things that I kind of feel identify my artistry. So I'm learning about the goje, which is like a violin from Ghana. It's a small violin. Like I think a lot of people have seen it, but the strings are actually made of horsehair. So it's a bowed instrument, and like there's a lot of ceremonial music that I'm currently learning from that. And there's a lot of another instrument called the zeze with a super long bow, but the bow is like actually shaped like the actual bow that you use for arrows.
Right. Okay.
So,
Yeah.
but it's like the hair is super straight and the stick is like really bent,
Okay.
but it's really long, and it's got a super high sound, and it uses fourths and fifths.
Okay.
So that's like the things that I now focus my. Where can I find bowed instruments, and where can I use a little bit of that voice? So like those questions began in college, and I'm now exploring these things at the moment.
Okay. And do you have any advice for anyone, especially I feel like now in high school, you have more time to like start exploring those things. Do you have any advice for any of these students who haven't started improvising yet, but definitely have the capacity to? Like, how do you get started?
I think it's really important to just say, just start. That's the first one. And then the second thing also is, what music do you love? What do you listen to on the daily that really inspires you? And can you sing it through your instrument? Okay, yes, fine. Sometimes it's a difficulty to find that when you're playing the violin and you've learned a certain way, and you try to play a certain genre of music, it doesn't sound natural. So we have to figure that out. That's your responsibility. If you love a certain type of music, try to figure out how you can sing it on your own instrument. So this is like my goal all the time, and I still feel like a beginner. And I think that's the third thing. You'll always feel like a beginner, and that's okay, and I think be okay with it from now, that you'll always start from the beginning each time you learn something new, and that's that. And then look at other people who are doing it. Who else is doing it? It might not be the same way that you want to do it, but listen to other people and obsess about other people's music, which is something that I'm doing at the moment as well.
So whose music were you listening to that got you obsessed with trying things out?
I would say when we started my first band, which was actually in St. John's in high school, a lot of the music was like really simple tunes, like like Cantaloupe Island, what's his name, Herbie Hancock, and then a lot of other African tunes, Abdullah Ibrahim, a little bit of those things, like really simple melodies, actually not jazz chords, but simple melodies that are really beautiful to sing and be able to play. And then later on, I started asking myself, as I say, about other African cultural music, and I found a lot of improvisation in that. So if I find an instrument that I like, I just literally type it in. So at the moment, I'm inspired by a music called Wagogo from Tanzania. And I've been listening to that day in, day out, and that's what I'm listening to now to develop my language. Yeah, so I wouldn't say like improvisation is jazz. I think improvisation is speaking in real time, you know, just singing and creating in real time. It's not a type of genre, so you can do it in any other way that you want. So yeah, I started out with like super African hymns and getting into Abdullah Ibrahim and the kind of jazz, and then moving on to the African music that I listen to now. Yeah.
I was wondering if you could tell everyone about all the different groups that you've played in since going to Northern, and how they've kind of like developed you as a player, and you know, like playing with other people, how that kind of influenced you. So when I went to St. John's, that was the first time I kind of, actually no, I'm lying to you. The first band I had was in Akosa. There was all the guys from Val wanted to create a band that didn't matter what instrument you played. So all the guys actually used to play at church. A lot of the guys that came from Val to Akosa. So they all played like the sang tonic solfa, and they didn't read music. And my brother put them all together and took them to read music at Akosa and teach them all of this stuff. So we decided that we'd make a group together. And the first group that came out of it was a quartet. It was a clarinet, trombone, cello, I think, and euphonium. Oh my God, that's such an amazing combo.
Yeah, really random, you know, really random. And all the guys wanted to do, it started with like the one tune. It's sing like a hymns feel, just like any old hymn, and then we'd say, how do we harmonize it? And then we harmonize it together, and that's already beautiful. And we're already in the process, and nobody cared who plays what instrument. So that was the first instant. That was like the beginning. And then I went to St. John's, and then we started a group, a quintet called Royal Flush. And don't ask me about the name. Like, yeah, like really like a time to grow and to explore playing in a group, because everybody in the group was now like sort of like the music students of my grade, you know. And that was like, okay, cool. We're starting to write music in a much more complicated manner. So we take, always that simple. So we take a small lullaby, that, and then we take it and just see harmonically what we could do to it, and rhythmically what we could do to it. And that became really like fun, and we played loads of concerts. And then all of this behind it, you know, I was always still practicing Bach, classical music, and everything else all together. And then went to college, and then I started a new band called Kabantu, which is the most recent, I guess the most recent thing. And the Kabantu was in order to celebrate musical styles that we all listened to. So we all loved world music. So there was a girl from Scotland who plays like super crazy trad. There was myself coming in with like the rhythms and the hymns. And there was a girl who plays congas, and she brought a whole lot of Cuban music. There was a guitarist who liked Bulgarian music. So why the hell not? Let's try and see, and just to have fun, you know. It was a blowout time, just to compose, arrange, and it wasn't always to perform in the end. That was not the objective. It was to have a good time. Cool. So we did all of that, and we started getting a lot of love and reception for the eclectic kind of music, and actually the chamber music thing that we gave to the idea of having a group that is non-classical. So we played a lot of music in such a way that it's as if we were in a string quartet, you know, the amount of detail, the amount of dynamics, and like the way we arranged the pieces. It felt as if I was playing sometimes a classical piece, but I was playing Bulgarian stuff and Brazilian music and South African music. So that was really nice. And we decided to enter competitions. We did the Royal Overseas League here in the UK, and we did it as a joke, but it went well. But because the whole reason for it was that we play music that is crossing the bounds of what we call chamber music, but also what we call world music or improvised music. So it was valid in both camps, and that's when I realized that that's like really my identity. Like I have a foot in both worlds. Like why can't I really be an embodiment of you know of the fusion, you know? And so that was that, and then not so long ago, a year ago, I left the band, and we'd been going for like 5 years, and it was like a breakup. It's like I lost a girlfriend, like a proper, you know, very sad, because it was a meaningful time in creating like my voice. But then moved on to actually now only focus on African music. So I have a new trio now, and the trio is called Chesaba. And Chesaba is the language of Bambara from Ivory Coast, and it simply means three men, which is something that was not very creative at the time, but there you go, you know. And so the band now, like we play, one of the guys plays djembe. He's a really a djembe master, one of the most rhythmic people I've ever met. And we have a bass player from Ireland, and we have myself on cello and voice. So play music from Ivory Coast, and we find rhythm music from Africa everywhere, and we try and explore that. And so that is like how far it's come. Sorry, it's a bit of a long spiel, but that's all the kind of bands that I feel like have created the voice that is today.
And I remember when I saw you play at the London Jazz Festival, which was just like amazing. You were saying that playing with your partner there, Bernard, kind of pushed you in so many ways. Could you tell everyone a bit more about that and like what it's like to play with a percussionist?
Okay. Yeah, I really wish we would have come to see you guys when we were in South Africa, but I somehow that didn't work out. But I really wish, like, because that's one of the collaborations I feel the most that I've ever learned from, you know. So Bernard is this percussionist who studied music in India, and they have a system of rhythm called Konakol, and it's like really mind blowing. It's simple maths, basically, the same way the rest of music is. So if you want to check it out on YouTube, it's just called Konakol. And you count with like taki taki dimi. Taki dimi is 4, taki dimi, and takita is 3, and taka is 2. So you can do it all across the different ranges of speed, and you can do incredible cross rhythms. So he came at me with this kind of trying to teach me this way of listening and of counting, and I found it hugely valuable. And it was kind of a very personal reckoning with him, because I, as a string player, and foremost as a classical string player, it was very difficult to decipher some of the rhythms, and but just to easily determine myself, not easily actually, but to get determined to learning a way of rhythm that is not from the classical sphere was very valuable. So yeah, he pushed me in a lot of ways, and we wrote a lot of music from my side, you know, from, you know, a singing perspective and a cello perspective, but also from an Indian rhythm perspective. So that was really mind blowing. I have some concerts I could share with you on as a just an audio just to listen to. That was recorded at the festival. Yeah.
That would be amazing. I also wanted to ask you how you practice things like that, because I'm sure, like, you know, coming from like a mainly classical background, you know, to like get used to all those rhythms and things like that, must take like a lot of work and a lot of time that you put in.
Yeah, you know what, metronome is God, like you know, for all of us, like I think time is like the one thing in all of music that is actually the same, you know. Rhythm is like, I think in my worldview at this moment in time, trumps everything, because it's the fabric that binds together all of music. Two quavers in any genre is the same thing, but harmony is very different in the different genres. So I sometimes just work on the metronome and then transcribe some of the rhythmic music that I hear. So if I listen to Ivorian music, he'll send me like a whole sort of phrase that I would try and decipher, but I would do it with a metronome. So start super slow, learning to and there's a language as well. I have to remember, sorry, there's a language as well, like high pitch noises and low pitch noises. Like then you start to learn that which sentences you're speaking. So I do everything super slowly. Just listen to a lot of stuff that I find of rhythm sequences, and then practice it super slow. It's actually not so complicated. It's just starting little by little, really. Yeah.
Okay. I think maybe now's a good time to open it up to questions. I've asked all the kids to come up with some things to ask you. I don't know, Peggy, do you have any questions that you want to ask before you?
I'm desperate to ask a question.
Okay.
What I'm wondering, Abel, I remember you once asking me in college years ago, probably 10 years ago, just asking me a really simple question: do I ever just like pick up the cello and kind of see what happens? Which I do. And then I was just thinking about that earlier on and thinking, when I pick up my cello and just play what comes out from my experience, and when you do, it's obviously going to be like a complete wondering if you have some kind of like when you have, say, a day, or, you know, like we are right now, we've got weeks and weeks where we are learning things for like particular concerts. What do you do that allows you to like feed this kaleidoscope of different things you're doing? Because all the music, I've heard I've heard you in Chesaba, in Kabantu, by yourself, in Manchester Collective, and it's all seriously like, it's really virtuosic. Like, how do you keep on top of in your practice something that serves everything?
I don't know. I think it's all like, I think you have to be so, if you aren't curious in your practice, then there's a problem, you know? I think it's really important to like not think along the lines of the boundaries, but more like, okay, like sound, you have to go through some sound exploration, let's say. Sometimes it's not, so I pick up my cello, I'm not trying to play a piece, I'm not trying to play a rhythm. Sometimes I just make sounds, you know, just to see what I can get out of the instrument. There's so much to learn about like the bow, you know, like why do we only go like this way? Why do we not go up and down? And can we go like circular? And how does that sound? And like, I'm inspired a lot by, there's a violin from Lesotho called Sekankula, which is like a metal violin, and they play it like in a circle like that, you know? I don't know if anybody's seen that. So yeah, check it out. It's called Sekankula, and it's you play it like this. And it's then I try to take the same things on the cello, and it's just exploring sounds constantly. I'm not always trying to make a song or always trying to, And then also when it comes to my voice, I'm like, okay, I can sing nicely, but can I sing like badly on purpose as well? You know, can I make, you know, I started doing that.
So cool.
You know, so you know, like it was like there was a time where I was like not trying to sing properly, but it was actually that came out. So I thought, explore those things, like take time to get lost in like just purely sound rather than trying to create something that is full of structure. Yeah. And sometimes it does feel like hitting walls, you know, and sometimes it feels pointless, but I think sometimes you come out with good things. So I have to set time apart to actually completely mess around and not to think that I have to be successful in creating something.
Thank you.
That's a great answer. Jabula, do you have a question?
Yes. So Abel, I'm Javula. So can I ask, how many hours do you practice a day? Because like it's hard to play and sing at the same time. So.
Yeah. Geez, man, I think the hours are like very varying, you know, because I think, as you know, like everybody's got to make a living and survive, and that's one of the things that I miss practicing a lot. But then I try to find time everywhere I can, really. I can't tell you a certain amount of hours, you know, and also a certain amount of hours doesn't mean a certain amount of success in terms of what you're trying to get to, in my opinion. I think, you know, to develop our craft, we all know that we need to play many hours, but actually there's also like efficiency and thinking, and that, can I do this in 20 minutes, you know? Which is why also I said, when I was talking about exploring those sounds, I said I set out a time on the side, 20 minutes to do whatever I want, because that might be all the time I have in before I have to go and, you know, wash the dishes and take everybody places and do things, and do a whole lot of things that are personal. But take out 20 minutes, and can you really focus in that time to do whatever you really need to do? So yeah, I don't always attribute like the amount of hours to how well things go. Although sometimes I do, most of the time, that I do need the time. So I just go with my body. But yeah, I try to play most days. Yeah.
Do you have another question, or is that it?
Yeah, that is.
That's it. Okay. Carmel, how about you?
I honestly don't have a question. It's just very what he has to say. Very nice sharing.
Yeah, man.
Maybe I can ask on Carmel's behalf if you have any advice for someone who's coming over to the UK to start their studies. Yeah, any bits of helpful advice?
Yeah, I mean, make use of everything that they give you, bro. Like, it's so unbelievable how endless and infinite the opportunities can be if you are aware of them. Because I think everybody that goes to college in these institutions comes from very different backgrounds. So you find that there's people who come from, you know, Purcell, or who come from, or wherever, you know, or Chets, or these other music schools that are super talented, and they're so used to the situation, and sometimes don't see the length and breadth of opportunity that is laid there for them. And I think the best advice to say is that don't think that you are in the same position. I think it's very important for you to realize, yeah, like, enjoy yourself, and but also the how big it is, and who can give you your future going forward, really. So I think, yeah, use everything, every little class, every little, you know, an artist comes into the college to give a workshop on like multiphonic score. Just do it, you know. And you never know how all of those things can come in handy in the future. So yeah.
Great, thank you. Sviso, do you have a question?
So I really didn't do as much research on you, Abel. Question in terms of like, I can't structure like rhythm patterns. I always have problems like when I play and get to a set stage, like syncopations or like triplets, and I was counting in 4, and I subside enough before, and then by the time I get to it, it's the wrong tempo, or I'm counting wrong. So like, I wanted to know how you actually pick up.
Okay. Claudia, did you hear that question fully?
I couldn't hear all of it, but I think the gist of the question was that how you can improve your rhythm, or how you work out rhythm in a helpful way. Is that about
Yeah.
right?
Okay. I think okay. So I think what I gather from the question is that sometimes sometimes I wish I could see you guys to like work on things maybe one day, but like sometimes the connection between your instrument and to when you create the sound and to how you think of rhythm is something that needs to balance out each other very well, you know. So the first way to get better at rhythm is to sing it all the time. So if you put on a metronome, you can always do your triplets with your voice. And the reason it's so good to sing it is because you have complete command of this instrument, you know. And then when you take it to your instrument, then you come across maybe certain challenges, but actually you already know what you need to achieve because you've achieved it here, right? I think try and relate, let's say, triplets, even for fun, to the kind of music that you listen to. So if you listen to, it's everywhere. If you listen to house, if you listen to you know, to jazz, to simple tunes, see always in your time how you can fit in those kind of triplets or where you can see those patterns. And I think, to be honest, the more you sing it, the better you'll get at it. And make the metronome your friend, but also live without it as well.
Thanks, that's great advice. Kwanda and Lindo, do you guys have any questions? Just remember to unmute yourself.
Okay, so I have a question. Okay, my question is, have you ever experienced like performance anxiety? And if you have, how do you deal with it?
Great question, thank you.
That's a great question. I think it's so important to be nervous. It's great. Maybe I'm a bit of a freak, but I love it. You know, like I think the things that you are able to ground yourself with, I think is firstly your physical body and also the way you think. So those are the two components. So like in everything, I always try to simplify, you know, what's really the most important things that will make me feel centered. So when it comes to the way I think of a performance, you know, no matter how much you've prepared, I think I always tend to tell myself that I have been preparing for this moment since I began playing the cello. That's usually what I say to myself, because the way you deal with mistakes, you come out of them, you know, in certain ways when you play, and you carry on. This is a really good thing. And we've always been making mistakes and coming out of them. So like you've been preparing for any sort of pitfalls you may have. Obviously, to quell the anxiety, you have to prepare a lot, you know, and know what you're going to do. Even if it's improvisation, I think, you know, to think, what am I going for is very important. I'm trying to relay this kind of message. And improvisation is not just a spontaneous making, it's a language. So in terms of a language, you have learned all the sentence structures, you have learned, you know, all the tools. So you're using that to create in the moment. Okay, and the other thing with the body, I think it's really important that you center yourself. You have to think about your breathing. I think it's really helpful. If you focus on your breath as it goes inside and as it goes outside, a lot of things in your mind fall to the wayside, except for the moment, you know. So that's what I usually use. I use like breathing techniques to kind of feel centered. And then and then before I play, I sing the music as much as possible, so that when I go on stage, I'm already in it. You know, I've already been singing in that manner that is not a foreign language to me.
That's a great answer. Thank you. Kanye, have you got a question?
Yes. So, hi, I'm Kanyi. How old were you when like you played your first like solo concert?
Hi,
And
can you?
the other
Oh,
question,
yeah.
what's your favorite piece?
Okay. Okay. The first solo thing I ever did, I was probably 10, I think. It was a concert at ARCO, and it was like I was playing, which is actually quite ironic. I was playing like a pizzicato piece, you know, and it was like really like jazzy. And it was for like a Royal Schools exam or something like that. And actually, I still think back to that moment because I'm still learning how to use more than one finger for pizzicato, like classical musicians do. Maybe we can use like the thumb, the middle, you know, and we can actually play a little bit more like bass players do, or anything like that. So that actually takes me back to that. So that was, I was 10 years old, and I played like a sort of jazz pizzicato piece. That was cool. And then my favorite piece. That's a Kanye. That's a hard question. I love Bach. Geez, that's a really hard question. I can't really answer that because I love so many pieces in many different ways. But for everybody's conscience, I'll just say Bach. I think the cello suits.
Thanks. Sorry, I just realized, Linda, I didn't give you an opportunity to ask a question. Do you have one?
Yeah. My question is, what other talent do you have other than music?
Okay. So the question is, what other talent do I have other than music?
I think so, right?
What about his personality, Linda?
Hey, that's up for questioning. That's up for questioning. Geez, I don't know. Like I feel like as a musician, you have to be a bit like an actor. You know, like you're playing a reflection of your audience. You know, so all the time, like it's like acting. It's like you're playing caricatures of people. You're playing. So I think I can be a bit of a chameleon in that way. Like I enjoy impressions. I enjoy making fun of people when I see them in the stage. Observe like how they speak and the kind of things they say. So I kind of enjoy observing people, but I wouldn't call it a talent. But that's what I like.
Louise, do you have a question?
There he is. Well, it's darn fine to see you, Abel. It's been far too long.
It's been way too long.
It's been way too long. I'm really interested in your hair. When did you last have your hair done in lockdown? That's my question.
Oh, did you just ask me that?
Definitely.
I mean, guys, it's been a rough time, hey. It's been a rough time for. I mean, it's been, this lockdown has actually like taught me so much. You know, I feel like things that really once mattered, some of them don't really. It's been a funny time, but also an opportunity to explore. So I haven't really thought about all of that.
I'm only joking. Actually, I was going to ask you what cello you're playing on at the moment, and if you use different instruments for different purposes. Maybe, yeah.
I have this at the moment. Actually, this cello is actually courtesy of Miyagi. Since I was when I played that concerto with the Boccherini concerto back in the day.
Yeah.
I was like 14 or something like that. And this is the cello I got afterwards, just after. so like really thankful to that, and it actually has lasted me till now, and I'm about to get a new cello. But in terms of using different cellos, I don't really, because I want to set up this cello to have my every needs, but sometimes I feel like I do, because sometimes I want the tension to be super low so I can actually get some percussion from the blackboard, you know. So yeah, I might have to think about having another cello, but I think at the moment this is the one that's seen me through everything so far.
Wow. Yeah, I was going to ask you one more question, and now my it's departed from my head for a second. So maybe someone else
I
should
can
go
come back
first.
to
But
you, sure. Andiswa, do you have a question?
Hi, my name is Andiswa, and my question is, do you think the love of music is instinctual or influenced by exposure?
Can you repeat that question again? Last time, sorry, Anderson.
Do you think the love of music is instinctual or influenced by exposure?
Okay, thank you for the question. I mean, I think, you know, I can't not refer to the, I know we all had very different upbringings somehow, but I just can't not refer to, as Black people, where we came from and the history and the influence of music, like whether you can sing or you're tone deaf. Yeah. So it's one of those things that I think it has made us instinctively be in love with music, and music a part of us. So like I think our culture is actually really contributed to us loving music in this way. No matter where you come from in South Africa, as a Black person, if you come from the township, I think it's just like you cannot love music. So it's certainly instinctual, and I think it's certainly sort of a God-given gift for us. It's like we don't have, for me, I feel like I don't have a choice but to enjoy. It's a love and hate relationship. Practice is difficult, but also the love of music is also an entirely different thing. So yeah, that's the best answer I could give.
Thank you.
Yes, Louise, hi.
I remembered. So, you know, so we've got a couple of people heading off to the UK in a few months, and we've got lots of people aspiring to get to the UK soon. What do you think sets a South African apart from the madding crowd of Brits? What do you think sets us apart, Abel? Can you give us a few things?
Okay, that's a great question actually, because look, I think tenacity and positivity are like one thing, you know. Like I think all of my friends that I came here to study with, you know, there's the guys that went to Basgate, that studied at the Royal Academy, and I came to the Royal Northern, and I really wanted to hang out with them. And we did 4 years, and I ended up doing 8 and staying, and went back home to teach. But I remember the one thing that was really similar about all 5 of us when we were there, you know, when I visited them in London, is that everybody had a very optimistic way of life. And I think that's something that it's not always natural, but it's very important to embed as you start your journey. Because things will go wrong. You will be tired, you know, you sometimes won't feel like doing it, but I think just always having, you know, understanding that you've come from so far away, and you know, it's very important that you yourself through, or that you make this experience as positive as possible. Something that I found like very connected within all South Africans, even other South Africans that are still here, like the guy called Gary Palmer, who's a viola player. I find that he radiates positivity, and that actually makes him withstand quite a lot of the challenges that he probably comes across as a professional musician in the UK. Yeah, and I think the other thing is to always like you're always kind of, all of my friends who have come here have always had very good instincts. Like you believe in an idea, and when you feel like this doesn't feel quite right, and I'm not playing my way, or I'm not playing in the right group, or that kind of thing, you have the instinct and the power to move, you know, to do something else that really suits you. So instinct is very important, positivity is very important, and that's what I found with most people. And then yeah, like a kindness that is passed between people is also one that's like kind of infinite between South Africa and even here. So yeah, like when you come here, when you first come to the UK, you should know that you're not alone, and you should know that you can ask for help and for advice. But also you should know that you've come on a very interesting and also sometimes steep voyage, you know, but also extremely exciting. So it's like, it's a combination of things, and this shouldn't overwhelm you. I'm just saying that you have to keep positive, good instinct, and be kind, and others will be the same to you, I think.
That's a great answer. Thank you. Mbali, do you have a question?
Yes. So my question is, did you ever think of quitting the cello? And if yes, what stopped you from doing that?
How am I gonna dodge this question?
Yeah.
Look, like I've never really seen myself doing many other things. But I think there was a time where I thought, you know, I have to be honest with you that the environment of classical music I found sometimes very difficult to fully exist in, and that was the only thing I was doing. So I changed course, not quitting the cello, but actually regulating my environment, you know, and thinking about what kind of thinking do I want to associate myself with, and who do I want to be around to play cello the best? Because the times where, I mean, I went through times where I played loads of competitions, like, you know, on the solo competitions, international stuff, that was so difficult, and I really wanted to do it, and I was really determined to do it. But at the same time, I had to ask myself, do I really want to be like a soloist in that way? Like to firstly play competitions and then win the competitions and then get the chance to play with orchestra? Or do I want to be creative in the way that maybe I can write my own African cello concerto where I sing and play, and then I can be invited to play with the same orchestras? So I had to just change the direction of where I wanted to go, you know, rather than say like the cello itself is not what I want to do. Because I find that the way I think of the cello is not, the cello is not full of Beethoven sonatas inside. It's not full of Schumann concerto inside. It's just an instrument. So like I have to figure out the best way I want to make it sing. And if I choose the right way, then I will keep on liking it. Hope that makes sense.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I think you had another question, didn't you?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
My second question was, what inspires you the most? I don't know if that question makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, it's at the moment it's my surroundings. It changes all the time. Like it changes constantly, and I don't expect it to be the same for anybody like all the time. Like what inspires you should always evolve. If like nothing is changing, then something is like definitely wrong, you know. Yes, you know, when I went first to college, like, and I'm not saying this is just my subjective like journey, like what happened to me. I was really interested in playing concertos, in playing Dvorak and playing Schumann, which is so beautiful. And I still really admire that stuff, and I still do it. But then that means I was inspired by a different category of people and a type of thinking and a type of musicianship. And then after a while, I started being inspired by actually hanging out with like different communities of people, and that came along with it. And then you learn the music and you learn how they eat, their culture, and I found that really fun. So I kind of ended up being more interested in getting a group of people in one room that are very different and seeing what happens. So I get a kick out of seeing people uncomfortable and meeting something that they've never seen before. So that gives me, yeah, it's like it gives me material to even write music about. So like, yeah, I think people inspire me, and I think different creeds of people inspire me, and especially when I see them in one space, that's quite like a jarring thing, because you see like this guy has a very different philosophy, or maybe their philosophies match in some ways or form, but they just have different words for it sometimes, and sometimes it clashes, and also that's, I get a kick out of that too. So yeah.
Okay, great answer, thank you. Does anyone else have any questions? Is there anyone that I missed out? If you can just put up your hand if you have another question, or just unmute yourself. Ali, do you have a question?
Yeah. Hi, Abel. Thanks for your time.
Hey, Ali.
I've got a question about kind of how life and music are at one with each other. You know, you're incredibly at one with music as a singer and as an instrumentalist. But how do you find your life experience influence your music making?
Yeah. I mean, this is like the current question actually, which is like, especially for classical musicians, it's a really hard one to answer. You know, like I find that I've been asking my friends why they play music and what's their reason for being good at like all these, like, of playing chamber music, or for being good at, you know, and at first it's very subjective. It's like very inward. You know, people feel like this is what it gives me. And then yet again, then you hear statements like, you know, being an artist, you become the mirror of your own society. And then you have to start thinking, what does that really mean? And sometimes, like, does that naturally mean that then you're an activist? You are like, have a certain message that you are trying to scream out for? And this is like a very difficult question to answer, because I think I try to speak a truth around what's around me, but also about just philosophies that I think ring true in order for human experience to be worth living, like, or to feel grounded, you know, like, so ideas about our community and how responsible it is for our personalities and who we are. So like at the moment I'm writing a piece for a quintet with Manchester Camerata, actually, about stories of people who have gone, who have been derailed from their society, and whether it's their problem or it's the community's problem. And there's a beautiful play that I'm like quoting, and it's called Tapang, which means hope. And so, like, bringing all that together, and like, for me, I have the freedom now to do that, you know. But as a classical musician, now you have to ask yourself, I'm playing this music, and why am I playing it? And this is the current question that I'm still asking myself. So I hope this answers a little bit of your question, but I know that I haven't answered it fully. But I think it's something that we're all trying to figure out. So I definitely would say to everybody, figure out why you're playing and what it does for other people and what it does for you.
That's a great answer, thank you. Are there any other questions that anyone has? No? Okay. Abel, if you're still up for playing a little bit of something, I think it would be really great to hear you.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, if you're up for it, but not to put you on the spot or anything.
Yeah. Okay, what will I play for you? I don't know if you'll be able to hear me very well. Okay. I'll just improvise a really something short for you.
Amazing.
And also just to show you a little bit what I'm working on. So like, I've been working with my left hand and just trying to sometimes only use my left hand, you know, and then sometimes with the cello, I'm lucky to have resonance. So that means I can play many notes in that time.
Amazing. Oh, thank you so much. An absolute pleasure to hear you play. Has anyone else got anything that they'd like to ask? Okay, I guess I think we're all done unless Louise or Ali, is there anything that you'd like to add?
No, just a massive thank you, Abel, and it's fantastic to see you. We need to arrange a face-to-face visit one of these days.
Yeah, it'll be really nice. It'll be really nice.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. You're an absolute inspiration, and we're so lucky to have had all this time with you. Yeah. So thank you for making the time for us.
Thank you. I hope to see you guys. I mean, I'm planning to come back home in December. I don't know if the school will open, but it'll be just cool to hang with you guys and maybe even play some music. And yeah, anybody who's coming to the UK as well, I'm always free to chip in any bits of advice or any bits of help. Yeah, we're all around in the same space. So yeah,
it's amazing. Thank you so much. I'll definitely make sure that we all connect with you when they're back in the UK.
Yeah.
So thank you so much.
Thank you guys.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.